In the last lecture, we set up our Mongoose models. Time to use them and to really understand what Mongoose does behind the scenes. So we get a message in a user model. Now we already got this Node.js view where we are able to submit a message. I'll change this to email because I want to create a user model as it is the more complex one. And I changed the name to email here too for the input field. I will get rid of this message output up here, don't need it anymore. And for now, this will be the view I'm able to submit. Now in my app.js file, I will update this message here to no longer get a message in the URL and to no longer pass one to the view because I don't output it there anymore. To be precise, I can also get rid of this route. Simply use my root route and render node here so that we don't have to type slash message all the time. So this is my get route loading this Node.js view. Now when we hit submit there, we want to submit to just slash, let's say. So here I will also update this action to just target slash, therefore reaching this slash post route here. And then here I want to create a new email first, or extract the email from the request. So I will store it in a variable and we can extract it on this request body as you learned before, because this is how we submit it. It is stored in the input field named email, and therefore we can access this email property on the body of our request. With that, I want to store it in a new user model or a new user object based on our user model. To do so, I first need to add an import. The import to the user model we created. So here I'll point to my models folder and then the user file. Without the file extension, this will be added automatically. We don't need to specify .js there, and actually it would lead to an error if we did so. This will import the user model since we do export it here. With that, we got access to this user model, and I can now call new user using this variable which uses this exported user model. Now, of course, if I were to store this in a variable named users, I would have to call new users here. But user makes more sense because it is one user we create. Now to the constructor, we pass a JavaScript object where we configure this model we want to create, or where we configure this object we want to create based on this model, I should say. So here we know that we will have a first name, because this is how we set it up here. We get a first name, a last name, a password, and an email, and the messages, of course. But these aren't required, so I don't have to pass them. And I won't here because we don't have any messages yet. We will do so later in the course though. So here I got the first name. I'll set it to Max because this is my name. Choose whatever name you like. I got the last name, I'll set it to Schwarz, a part of my last name. And I get a password. We're not encrypting it here, we will do so later in the course, of course, but for now I'll name it, or I'll store it super secret as a password, which obviously isn't. And then the email should be the email I extract from the request body. Of course, I could have extracted it right here, just want to make this as structured as possible. With this, I created my user here, an object based on my model, and I pass my data to this user object to, well, set it up as the model requires me to set it up. Now comes the part which I mentioned earlier. It's super easy to now save this to the database. All we have to do is run user save. That's all. This will tell Mongoose to store this user object in the user's collection. It will create the collection automatically if we don't have it yet in the database. In which database? In the one we configured here in our root app.js file. We can pass a callback here, which is executed after this saving has been done, where we can listen for errors because as arguments, Mongoose will give us an error or the result of this operation, and we will use this callback throughout the course to handle errors. For now, let's keep it simple and just call save. Now in the end, of course, we want to redirect to just slash and no longer append a message here, because that won't work anymore. With that, let's restart the server because we changed a lot of server-side code, and let's head over to the application at localhost 3000 now. I'll store a database or an email to the database by entering it here and hitting submit. And now, did it work? We can't tell because we're not fetching it yet. We only store something there. Well, I showed you earlier how we can tell. Let's go back to the terminal and start this Mongo client on Windows without the terminal, simply execute the executable. And in there, we should use node Angular, since this is the database we use. And then we got some collections, you saw that earlier. We can access the user collection by typing db.users. And then find will show us all the users in this collection. And here we indeed see this new user, this single object, Max Schwartz, super secret and email. This looks really like the user we just created, and it is. You see the messages array is empty because we didn't pass one, and you see it has this underscore ID field, which we didn't create, which Mongoose creates automatically. I mentioned this earlier. Mongoose does this for us, and it uses this object ID type here, though in the database in the end, this will be just a string, so we see it a bit different here. It's a special kind of string, so to say, holding the ID of this object, this unique ID, of course. This is how we can store data in a database, and I think this is really convenient, and this is the reason why I use Mongoose, because it's so easy to set this up and to get validation, to see if this is right, and to store data in the database. Now in the next lecture, let's also fetch some data.